sorry. Is there no script for someone else to read it?
We are live,
All right.
Yeah, it's fine, because we'll just call for the motion.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
we're live, so not so.
Someone-
Okay, thank you. I'd like to call this meeting to order. At this time, Mr. Clerk, will you please call roll?
Yes, Secretary Matulak,
Present.
Trustee James,
Present.
Trustee Matias,
Present.
Trustee Palmares,
Present.
Trustee Gordon.
Present.
Oh, there we go.
And I just want to let for the record that President Source just arrived, that Vice President Bergenser will not be in attendance today.
And Trustee Letiju is parking.
And Trustee Leju is arriving as well.
Thank you and apologies. Yeah. We were stuck in different traffic.
Yeah.
Coming from opposite directions. All right, where are we?
Just call roll.
Probably the Pledge of Allegiance then, right?
Yes.
So, yeah, let's all go ahead and, stand for pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. Thank you all. That's gonna bring us to our approval of the agenda. And I'm gonna first ask if there are any requests for changes to the agenda or anything you'd like to clarify. And if not,
I have a clarifying question. So can you explain the process by which we get to add agenda items?
that I don't know that I've discussed. How would a board member add an agenda item?
So we cannot add agenda items at the current meeting because it hasn't been noticed pursuant to the Brown Act. If there is an issue too late to be agendized, if we have an emergency issue, we would ask that you at least bring it up with the general manager and me ahead of time so we can make sure that it meets the emergency requirements. If not, you can ask during the proceedings to have an item added to the next agenda.
Okay. And it's just a one-step process, so I request it during the meeting and then the following meeting gets included.
Yes, and ahead of time, during the month, if you'd like to ask for something to be added to the agenda, you can ask the president, and then typically the president would work with the general manager to place that on the agenda.
Right.
For example,
So,
yeah.
just asking.
For example, I mean, in the last meeting, Trustee James was talking about encampment issues and talked about creating a task force. But that's not on this one, so we have to kind of figure out a process to get those added in.
That's a great question. So with that, do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
Yes, I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve the agenda.
Wonderful, and we do not need a second if I'm remembering correctly, every board's different. All in favor? Any noes or abstentions? All right, passes unanimously. That's gonna bring us to announcements. And this month, we have new employee introductions. So General Manager Tomko, would you please introduce us
All right,
to your new
appreciate it.
staff members?
Thank you. So I'd like to have my directors introduce their staff members. Justin Keating, our Director of Field Operations, could you please?
Thanks, Mark. Justin Keating, Director of Field Operations, is our new field operations employee. Jesse Sanchez, he comes to the district as a grade 1 collection system tech. And he comes to us from the city of Vacaville in their water and sewer department.
Welcome.
Johnson Ho, he's our Director of Operations, to introduce a few employees.
Good evening, my name is Johnson Ho, Director of Operations. Sean Hayes, 10 years of wastewater experience, came from Ventura County Wastewater Department. And in his spare time, like hiking and nature.
Welcome.
And secondly, Eric Kershaw is born and raised in Vallejo. He's been with the district for 18 years. Came here as an entry-level mechanic, rise to the ranks and become a facility maintenance superintendent now. So we welcome him, and he has done a great job. In his spare time, he loves bicycle, motorcycle. He collects motorcycles.
Right on.
Yeah.
so you have one more employee they're not here,
It's
but,
not yet, we'll do it next month.
okay, thank you. Tucker, would you like to introduce?
Sure, Jeff Tucker, I'm the Director of Finance for the district. I'd like to introduce Trevor Davis. Trevor was an intern with us for a while in the IT department. With the retirement of one of our long-term employees a couple months ago, Trevor was able to apply for and got the position of IT technician with us. He's raised his entire life in the city of Fairfield and graduated from RVO High School. So we're happy to have him join the team.
All right, any other updates?
No.
All right, thank you so much. Welcome to our new employees. That's gonna bring us to our consent calendar. And we have items A through F, which I believe is 6 items. And we're gonna first ask for public comment on any of the consent calendar items. Do any of our attendees wish to comment on the consent calendar? All right, seeing none. Does the board have any questions or want to remove any items from the consent calendar? All right, hearing none again. Do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstaining? All right, the consent calendar is approved. That is going to bring us to item 6, which is our administrative items. And we have 3 of them, I believe. So I'll ask the clerk, are there any public comments for our administrative items?
I have not received any electronic public comments, President, and I do have info.
Anyone wishing to comment on these administrative items? All right, so we'll go ahead to, let's see, item A, which is to receive and file the organizational assessment report. So I'll turn it over to the general manager.
Thank you.
This item.
Appreciate it. Mark Tomko, General Manager. This is providing an informational presentation on the organizational assessment report from Raptilus that also provides information on administrative item B. Next slide, please. First question is, why are we doing an organizational assessment? When I started as General Manager in January 2024, it was apparent that a strategic plan was needed to provide direction for the district. The leadership team and I developed a 2-year strategic plan, which is this, that started July 1st, 2024. And this was to provide the direction and vision of the district. Goal number 1 of the strategic plan is a workforce planning and development. This is the foundation of what makes the district great. It's the people. Milestone 1A required the completion of an employee master plan or organizational assessment. Raptilus was selected in a request for proposals processed and contracted in September 2024, basically to complete the organizational assessment. Next slide, please. So the goals of the report were to 1, review the organizational structure and gaps, to benchmark it and do a performance comparison, to do a staff survey. I don't know if you can see this, okay. Do a staff survey and then come up with recommendations. The survey was added to obtain staff input and to better understand the culture of the district. There was a high level of participation in the survey with 89% of the employees completing the survey, which was great. So we had a lot of employee involvement. One of the figures, figure 7 on page 11 of the report, shows a summary of the responses for each category, which is shown here. In general, green is good, red is bad. Green good, red bad, and red kind of needs improvement. The district overall has a lot of green, as you can see. More than 75% of all of our responses were in the green area, which means that they strongly agree with some of the statements that were said about the district. And this was reflected in some of the questions. Over 70% of respondents plan to retire from the district. Employees like working for the district and have good working relationships with their coworkers, and employees have a shared dedication to serving the community. The areas to improve that you can see in the longer red or orange line include organizational issues. Communication is one of them, and mainly internal communication and accountability. The areas to improve are further broken down in the study. So it's the study, you should have it as well, this study. So this was the organizational assessment. It's further broken down by department. So each department, you can kind of see in each department, like where the strengths are, where are some of the angst or things that are happening in there. So it's a great way to focus our energies and look for solutions. The organizational issues provide the need for this report to provide a plan for improvement. And as you can see, the bottom one, workplace safety, as shown on the bottom bar, is very positive. It looks like, not a lot, everybody feels safe, that's great, and great safety program, and a lot of that is by bringing in full-time security. But I will note that for staff that work in the field, 60% of employees don't feel safe in the field. So that's one of our concerns is employees that go on the field, and we have quite a few pump stations looking at pipes, doing that type of work. They don't necessarily feel safe, 60%. Next slide, please. So to determine if the district was in line with other peer agencies and on expenditures and staffing, Raftellus compared the district with other peer agencies such as Napa San, Central San, Delta Diablo, Orloma Sanitary, Union San, and West County Sanitary District. They also did a national survey looking at AWWA, which is the American Water Works Association. And that's the national averages. So the figure is one of the many benchmarking factors that they looked at in the survey. So this is just one of them. There's several in the report. And this one is looking at O&M cost per account, so O&M per user accounts. Overall, the district was found to be in line with its peers. The district is above the national average primarily due to the increased regulations and increased costs in California. So, next slide, please. So I want to highlight a few of the 14 recommendations from the report. Recommendation 1 provides the recommended long-term structure of the district. Raftellus looked at 2 different structural models. One was the assistant general manager model. The other one was the director model. The recommended structure was our current director model. An added assistant general manager position was brought to the board last year to address several responsibilities where the gaps around the organization, and it did not move forward. With the director model, the creation of the business services department fills those gaps and aligns operational functions. Next slide, please. Recommendation number 6, add 1 new IT leadership position to supervise staff and align IT activities with district goals. And as far as the recommendations, I think on the second page, I list all the recommendations. And then near the end of it, it provides a pretty good breakdown on what the recommendations are. So recommended 6, adding a new IT leadership position. So this recommendation was also included in the IT master plan that we did with Moss Adams. With the changing complexity of IT and then also AI, it's apparent that a leadership position is needed to better guide the district. Recommendation number 7 was to create 1 new procurement position in the finance business services department to provide oversight and guidance to operating departments. This position is currently being recruited and was made available due to a vacant position in finance that was redefined to better serve the district. Next slide. Recommendation 9, develop a 5-year strategic plan that is facilitated by an outside party. So this effort, it's going to start pretty soon because we're in a 2-year plan right now. So we need to start in July. And this will include the board, the district, and other stakeholders. The original plan was basically done by the leadership group. This is going to be a 5-year plan that's going to, the board, everybody else to really dive deep and develop a strategic plan for the district. Because the 2-year strategic plan has been great. We're hitting all the milestones. We're hitting a home run. All the milestones are being hit. It's worked really well. Recommendation number 10 is develop an outreach and recruitment programs to encourage workforce more representative of the community the district serves. The district is working towards this goal. One example is in the communications plan that is being developed to include outreach, education in local schools, working with local colleges, and day work. An example of this is Nicholas Collins that just walked in. So he's in operations, starting operations. I don't know if you want to quickly provide his.
We get his bio. Nicholas Collins, the setup. So he's the first intern. We partner with Baywood, who strategically have internship program for wastewater and water industry. So he's the first internship program, and he just get his associate degree from Dallas College, and that's continuing his education with Solana Community College, so he can gain this opportunity and knowledge of the utility sector here. So he's our first intern. So he's a Vallejo resident, born and raised in Vallejo.
It's certainly one of the recommendations that'll probably move forward is, really trying to make sure we recruit internally and try to get a district that also resembles the community. Next slide. In summary, the survey provided useful information on the positive and things to work on at the district. Benchmarking confirmed that the district is in line with peer agencies as it relates to staffing and operating expenses. The recommendations in the organizational structure are reflected in the following positions. The recommended procurement position is currently being advertised and utilizes an existing position to better meet the needs of the district. The business services director position is a restructuring of the existing finance director position and adds procurement, IT, internal and external communications, and administration. The updated job description and compensation is included in administrative item B. In addition, they're actually also looking, overseeing HR right now, as we lost our HR manager. The existing finance manager job description, job and compensation has been updated to include the treasurer duties, including oversight of the district treasurer functions, determining investment strategies, and managing the district debt. This is also included in administrative item B. The IT manager is a new position that we proposed in the next budget. The job description for this new position is also included in administrative item B. Next slide. So this was a quick overview of the organizational assessment. If there's any questions I can answer, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you very much. All right, I'll open it up to questions. I saw Councilman or Trustee Matulik, and then we'll just circle around.
So first and foremost, the presentation was a little hard to follow, because you were showing graphics up there, but they weren't represented in the packet, so we were kind of fumbling along. And then any reason why you skipped over some of the recommendations that you didn't talk about?
No, I actually was just trying to highlight some. I highlighted some others in the staff report. They're all valid. We're working on them all. I just didn't want it for time.
No, thank you for that clarification, because the one I'm looking at is recommendation 3, maintain engineering staffing at current levels for now, but have human resources evaluate the assistant engineer title for use at VFWD. So can you further explain that? Because when you're looking at all of these, especially when you're talking about personnel, I'm imagining there's a budget impact somewhere. So I'd like to have an understanding of what that comes out to be.
Absolutely. So great question. So in the last board meeting, we actually approved the assistant engineer and the senior engineer. And so the positions of those are actually filling existing positions. So they're existing positions that we're either moving up or down to fill them. So as engineering is looking at things, and that's part of technical services, it's looking at those and trying to fit those positions in, but we wanted to have more stratification in our labor market, because right now we have 3 associate engineers, they're all very good, but trying to get more interns, bringing in assistant engineers and try to get more diversity. But as far as impacts on the budget, right now, the only impact on the budget is the IT manager position.
Okay.
All the other positions are vacant positions that we're filling.
So, because it sounds like you're readjusting some, taking some job descriptions out of some and putting them into others. So that's where I'm a little bit amiss of how that is all being streamlined.
Correct. It is a little bit difficult because as we have vacant positions in certain places, we move them, but these positions, ones in technical services, we're there. Although we are looking, so as we move out of projects like MIPS, as we're looking also in development is taking up a lot of time. We have a consultant right now that's billing, I don't know, take $500,000. Yeah, $500,000, that's a lot of money. And so one of those positions, we could use that, actually get paid by development to actually fill that position. So as engineering, we're looking at right now what they looked at, Raptels, they said, based on your peers, you look like you're about okay, but they also added in that it really depends on the size of your projects, the complexity, and what's actually happening. And they're not really looking at the development. Vallejo has a lot of development projects that are moving forward, at least through the process. And so that's, it takes up a lot of time. So each agency is a little bit different. We're basically in line, but we may have to add a position later. We're in the budget cycle right now, so we're looking with engineering. I believe in the budget cycle, we have one engineering position potentially to add.
Because I think as we as council, in fact, we're going through our own budget evaluations right now. I think it seems like we may need to do a similar type of exercise for VFWD. So that way we understand the cash flow and where we may be needing to reevaluate some of these either not necessarily positions, but how we kind of allocate some of our funding.
Perfect, yeah, and we're, at the next meeting is when we're gonna provide, everything on the budget.
Okay.
So we'll provide everything on the budget, and that'll show the positions, we're keeping the budgets, I believe we're only planning on adding one, and then one the following year.
Okay.
But a lot of it, you're right, it's looking at what we have and seeing how we can move positions around, because, over time, your organizational changes, and there's opportunities to potentially move positions from one place to another to try to focus on the things that are moving forward.
Thank you for that clarification.
All right, trustee Gordon will continue around.
Yes, thank you. So in your report on page 9, I was very concerned. One of your demographic of your female hire being 23% versus the male position 68%. And then I'm concerned of your African American race, only 7% versus 48% being your highest. I'm concerned about that because our demographic is, we say we're diverse. And although I do see a few African Americans, yay, but I am concerned that I don't see a lot. And I do know that speaking to your previous HR, she did share that as a concern. And this is no secret. So is there something you'd be working with that? Do you have a plan and strategy for that, especially in your head administration?
No, absolutely, and so that, kind
We
of.
did talk briefly about that, so he's already prepared. I was going to ask this.
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely, the two questions, we could start with the male, female, so that, certainly in our industry, there's a lot of parts that are typically in a male-dominated area with ops and operations. So that's always been difficult, but we have heard is that operations, there's a lot more females that are getting in operations. And so we're reaching out, part of our communication plan as we develop it is going to Solano College, going to these colleges and trying to get them in. We want to make sure, it's kind of the hard thing is you have to get like a couple in and then they find a home and then it starts to work. And then they can tell their friends and say, hey, this is working out. So on the operations side, it sounds like, from what I've heard, there's a lot more women that are getting in the program. And so that's certainly an opportunity that we'll start recruiting for. In the field operations, there just hasn't been as many, unfortunately. So, and some of this with engineering, obviously we have more women that are coming in engineering, and those are fields that seem to have a lot more, certainly in finance and accounting, we have a lot, and then HR as well. So there's some female dominated fields, but some of our big fields for operations, maintenance, and field ops have been male dominated. And so we do need to make strides to help that. But what we look at is coming into the fields, looking at the colleges, there are more women that are getting into operations. And so hopefully we can drop in that.
Thank you for sharing that. Because when I was on Mare Island, there was a group of women who was on the island, who were being recognized by Congressman Garamini, and they said that they got into the field. They were not part of the event, by the way. I pulled them in, and so they were saying that they got into it because someone reached out to them and let them know that this is here, are you aware this is here? And not the traditional, employment that most people seek out. So I appreciate hearing that you're gonna be working on that. Also too, on page 12.
Oh, do you want me to answer your other question?
Oh, go ahead,
Yeah,
thank you.
happy to do that too, because, so this basically showed the demographics that we have, and it compares the demographics of the city of Vallejo. And yes, it's always been, how do we make that work? Do we have a plan to do that? No, we don't. But looking at this, it's like, how do we get a plan? So how do we work in the next strategic plan? How do we work moving forward to try to do that? And part of the communication plan is going out in the neighborhoods, going to the school districts, going to different schools. We're an employer of choice. We're a great employer. We have great benefits. So how do we get the kids in Vallejo interested in the jobs here? So certainly that's part of the things that we're doing, is reaching out with Baywork and others and trying to get the word out that, hey, we're a great employer. Try to get them early. In my early career, I went to Orange County Sanitation District, one of the Cub Scout. Went there and like, wow, wastewater treatment plant, this is pretty cool. And who knows, I ended up working there. But it is trying to get the community to understand here, having open houses and different things, maybe even sending with a social media presence so they know who we are and know that there's jobs here.
Yeah, so I know out of my 4 grandchildren, 2 of them had a field trip here. But as elementary, not so much as middle school or high school. And then my two younger ones, likewise, again, elementary, not so much as middle school and high school, that might have been a good introduction, maybe seeking that as a field trip. So that they can get that seed planted in them earlier, or earlier on.
And we're looking forward to working with you as far as the strategic plan. So that's gonna be most likely, I would guess, something in the strategic plan that we can work on together.
Absolutely.
And try to set something up so we can help with these statistics.
Well, I'm here for you.
Perfect.
Thank
Appreciate it.
you.
Sure, I'm curious.
Oh, sorry, page 12. Thank you, sorry. So I went to go to page 12, and I was kind of concerned regarding your facility maintenance. I see that, wow, almost 50% there, almost 50% in your technical service for accountability. Likewise, the same for work environment, and likewise, the same professional development in your HR was really high there. And almost, same thing with the, professional development. It's not as 50%, but it's not good numbers. Is there a reason for what we're looking at, and do you have a plan to work on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, getting this report will be to look at each department, look at the issues. I mean, I have some idea why some departments are, there were some things that were happening compared to others. So it is kind of looking at those and how we can best address those. But that's what's so great about the data is we can look at it and figure out, hey, there seems to be a problem here. What can we do to fix it?
Okay, thank you so much.
Go ahead, trustee Ledger.
Thank you. So I'm curious, to Eddie, by any chance, can we quickly pull up the leadership, on our webpage?
Oh, yes.
Thanks.
The leadership.
Your leadership page?
Oh, so I mean, yeah, and you can also, we can do that. Also on the strategic plan, it lists the leadership except for Alexandria. So on the.
So I haven't put this, so I want to pull it up. So,
This says this.
okay.
So it's being recorded, right? I'm just making sure he said it's being recorded. So it's supposed to be on the side. It's good that you're doing that.
Okay. So when we talk about diversity, and Trustee Gordon spoke about diversity, I look at this organizational chart, and you are in the midst of reorging, and you have reorg your your finance department, I think, is it field operations and technical services? And we don't have any representation of females in our leadership. I find that very problematic as an organization. And so I don't know how we're going to adjust for that, because I think it's really important that we have 5 individuals in leadership, and they are not reflective from the gender perspective of our organization. So that's really concerning too.
I agree with you.
And I think if we've spent this much time on considering a reorg, that had to have been considered. What does that really look like? Because I'm certain that if we look at where you've collapsed, you had some females who were in leadership.
Correct.
Okay, so that's really important to me. How are we going to address that?
Right. No, absolutely. So one, the other female that was part of the executive team was Alexandria, and she, Black female. So she retired, or she left on another job. We're in recruitment right now for another HR manager.
But that's a manager, that's not a director.
Correct. That was part of the report, is that, but the idea that potentially that manager could actually slide under the business services group, which is.
But that
which is
would be
fine.
under, that would, again, if you put the picture back up.
Agreed.
And I'm not being confrontational, I'm just really daylighting that that's problematic. And generally, I'm gonna daylight this. Generally, it's a typical position where in HR, we find that women are in HR. And so the question is, if we have women who are in this group, who are in management or who once were directors, how are we really gonna deal with that equality within the organization? And when we're talking about reorging, what does that mean to the body that you work with? That's concerning for me. So I'm not sure how you'll address it, but I wanted to daylight that because I find it very interesting when we talk about equity, when we talk about diversity, and it's not just ethnicity, but it is also gender as well, and so forth and on. Okay. So that's my biggest point. And then I think on 12, we talked about it, and trustee Gordon talked about it, but in the technical services, we have a lot of red. And so it's just really how we're gonna deal with communication, what are the issues around accountability? And again, organizational issues, I don't know what they are, because I don't really know the details of the work. And so, and the professional development, how will all that be worked and addressed, and what are the plans overall from your perspective, and really moving the needle in those areas?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the exact steps we'll take in all these, I mean, this is the survey results that provide some indication on what we can do. But I think the answer, one of your earlier questions, I agree with you. We've shrunk the executive management team. I mean, we were 8 before, we shrunk it down to like 5 or so. One of the things I'm working on doing is to try to get more involvement from my manager level to make that more of a senior leadership team. And in that one, we do have more women in that to try to provide that more diversity in what we're doing. Because you're right now it's all males, and then we'll have the engineering manager. We'll see what that happens, but trying to get more diversity in the team, but it's slowly gonna rise up and bring it.
So I appreciate that, but as someone who have a systems background, organizational background as well, and yes, we work in layers in our organization, but I will submit to you, that should be going on anyway. That's part of building a wholesome, healthy organization. And I still am going to challenge you that we have 5 males running this organization who are essentially the bottom line decision makers, and we don't have diversity. And that is really problematic from a perspective of equity within an organization. And I realize that we have to look at competency as well. And I'm not negating that, to be frank, but I really am going to challenge this organization about what are we going to do differently. Because I think that's very important. And, the individuals who did this report, that should have been something that was daylighted about, hey, when we do this, this is going to be the impact, and this is what your organization is going to look like. And I find it, I'm gonna be really frank, very offensive when you've done a reorg structure such as this and spent this kind of money, and that's the result of it. So those are my last comments.
Appreciate it. I mean, I'd certainly love to work with you on that as well. Absolutely.
All right, continue around with comments from Trustee Matias. Go ahead.
Thank you, President. So, the first question after the general manager is, what is the action that we're being asked to approve the filing of this report, but to what end, or what is the purpose behind that?
Correct. So the report, it's an informational report for you, and it was performed for the district. It's a final report. But in the report, it has some recommendations for some position creation. Basically, the business services director was taking the finance director position and reclassifying as the business service director. So it's changing the job description and the compensation. Also the finance manager. So the finance manager also taking on more duties based on the structure that we're proposing. So that one's also the finance manager, new job description and compensation. And then last one is the IT manager. So those were the 3 that we're asking for for your support to basically add those in.
Okay, so thank you for that. And then my second question is, how is it, what you just described, how does that interweave, or how does that play in with this employee master plan that you're working on? How do those 2 things talk to each other, or is there any relation? I just wanna understand, in terms of these positions that are being created, these things that we're being authorized to do in relation to this other work that you're carrying out. Kind of what is the goal, or how have you thought through the sequencing?
Got it. So I was referring to the employee master plan that's in the strategic plan. So the employee master plan is the organizational assessment. It's just they used a different term So that is the organizational assessment, is the master plan. So that is the employee master plan. And we were trying to get it done before this budget cycle to make sure that, hey, you know, where are we as an organization? You know, do we need more staff? Let's see what we have before we take this budget cycle.
Okay, the next question I have for you is about your org chart. So
Which one?
the memo, that's where I'm going.
Okay.
The memo, page 3 shows the org chart in 2024. And then if you look at page 19, which is, I guess, the direction you're heading in, which is more of a director structure, is the direction that the consultant is recommending that you move in. So I want to understand, where are you right now in terms of making those shifts?
Correct. So big change. So the one here in 2024, this is as existing, what we have now. And then what they're recommending, and this is more of their like long-term recommendation. So the things that we are doing is, right now, all we're doing is making the finance department, finance director, we're creating the business services department, and we're moving IT, procurement, communications into that group. So that's all moving to the business services group. And these are parts that when we came last year, these were like things that we started needing. And these were things that are in the report that, hey, you need more communications, you need internal and external communications, you need lobbying, you need all these things. It's like, well, where do we put it? So we made an attempt last year to look at maybe this AGM. So this, what they've suggested is making this business services group. So that's going to include those. One of the ones that's in here is this compliance strategy manager. We're still vetting that one to see where it goes. There's also this director of operations that looks at combining field operations and operations. That may be a long-term wish. We don't really believe that's feasible. It's a huge department. Doesn't necessarily make sense to us, but it's a recommendation that they have from some of their other agencies. So it's one of those things as, you know, as positions open up and you have things, maybe that makes sense, but it doesn't make sense for us now, so we're not pursuing that direction. They're also in that they're removing the lab and environmental compliance under operations, and we're not doing that, at least not at this time.
Okay. My next, President, I'm almost done. My next question is, so again, I want to understand some of these shifts, and this is not my background, so bear with me here. The 2024 chart has environmental services, engineering, program quality outreach under technical services. And then here, I think you were just speaking to this a second ago, those, I guess some of those positions have now been moved under operations, and then there is a quasi similar position under the business services division. And so my bigger question, I want to zoom out. It caught my eye because it was colored, the box was colored, and so then I started thinking, and I was like, do you agree with these recommendations that this report is outlining? And I'm just pulling out that one example. There was some rationale given as to why some shifts were happening and why others weren't. But I guess when I look at that, I don't really understand why that shift is happening. And so is there some discretion you're exercising, or are you just kind of following this to the T? And so can you speak to that move in particular? And then what are some of the shifts you're agreeing with, and then some of the shifts you're not necessarily agreeing with?
No, that's a great question. So yeah, this is a study by a consultant, and they do a bunch of them. And I talked to some of the other agencies that they've done studies for, and pretty much in all of them, I mean, they make some recommendations. Some you take, some you don't. As you look at your organization, what works. And so what I had, you know, really talked to them about this. I'm like, I don't totally agree with all of this of where it goes. And they're saying, well, that's basically where we see it based on looking at all your peers. And this may be a long-term goal for you. So part of it is looking at, well, okay, looking at together, what do we want to do now? What makes sense now? What makes sense budget-wise? You know, how can we make these moves, and what makes for the best part of our agency? You know, what makes us work the best? So we're looking at how we can best do that. So yeah, I don't necessarily have a graph to say exactly, this is here's what we're gonna do in step one, but as we get the budget book, as we work on the budget, it may be something that we can help out with there to really say, okay, we're planning on doing this in year one, year 5, we hope to be here. Right now, I don't ever see the field operations and operations being combined. I just don't see it. The difference is that a lot of agencies, and this is, as you have a consultant, all special districts are a little bit different. Some are just wastewater, a lot more wastewater, some have trash. We have stormwater, and so our field operations is a huge department. So we're doing both stormwater and wastewater. And so combining with operations makes this monster department of, I don't know, 50, 60 people. It blew away all the other departments here. So it doesn't make sense to me that those would be combined.
Okay, and then my last question, it has to do with the survey. So, there's a couple things this group is working on in another agency we oversee. But one of the things that caught my eye from these survey results was that the strongest sort of levels of disagreement that you saw in this survey were around 2 areas: organizational issues and communication. It's a big red flag for me, huge red flag. So I would like to know, I don't know how long you've been working for this agency, but could you shed some light, based on your tenure as a general manager or otherwise, what are some of the communications issues that have surfaced and organizational issues that this board should be aware of, since 4 of us are new? And then similarly, how are we going to ensure that they're being promptly addressed as you're implementing what is a massive report with many recommendations? So.
No, great, that's a great question. It's certainly why I'm here, to try to make sense of this. And so overall, the district, I've been with the district almost 10 years, but I've been general manager a year and 4 months. So one of the things that they talk about in the report is, with new leadership, there's change. And so there has been a bunch of change, and as we try to get through the change and kind of this change management, how do we best do that? How do we get that to our employees? And so kind of what we found is I've been making some changes. It's trying to get those networks set up that, how do I best articulate this change to the staff? And there's areas I just didn't do it very well, quite honestly. As we're making change, hey, I think we should do this, I think we should do that. It's how we actually make that transformation and do it more seamlessly. So the 2 areas, we made some organizational changes early, and so that caused some of the friction right off the bat. And then the communication is like, well, we don't know what's going on as staff. How is this communication being handled? How do we best deliver this information to staff? So that's the reason for this communication plan and business services, to basically how do we better do our internal communications? How do we have SharePoint? How do we celebrate employees? And how do we be more transparent with our agency throughout it? So yes, I think a lot of it is based on, hey, there's change. There's new people coming into positions, and that has created some change right off the bat. And so there's been some friction there. And there's changes throughout the organization as more people come in, but it's how we deal with those changes. And we're still trying to get those pathways, how do we deliver that information to staff so that they feel comfortable and they say, okay, I understand what's going on. I've been given enough information that this makes sense.
And I also definitely share the concerns that Trustee Lettis raised in terms of your leadership team, and there needing to be some more diversity, and I would like to see action on that sooner rather than later. And for me, a lot of this goes back to what's your plan, right? And what's your timeline to implement that plan? And so I want to see more surveys personally. I want to make sure that as this is being implemented, we continue to get data from your team, and that's a helpful data point to this body to make those changes. And then similarly, I would like to see you as our head of agency develop a plan that sort of articulates what are the steps you're going to take to make sure that this agency is sort of reflective of the community it serves. So that's all I got for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Paul Perez.
Yeah. Just 2 questions. So 41% of those who were surveyed, 58 employees, mentioned they feel unsafe when they go work in the field.
60.
60.
40? I said 60.
Oh. Oh, so, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, I may be reading it somewhere else. It could be.
I'm reading 58 right here, so.
Oh, okay.
58, 60,
Yeah,
it's not
okay.
important, but still 41%. Do you know why they feel unsafe?
I mean, I can guess at it.
Yeah, take your best out of it.
I mean, I guess, so we've had, you know, over the past year, we've had trucks broken into, we've responded to emergencies on Sunday that people broke windows and stole trucks. So they see what's happening in the city of Vallejo. We're dealing with a lot of the encampment issues out there. We're having to confront people. I mean, it's a little scary out there. There's places we're in the sewer system where they're at night. Eric, maintenance superintendent, we do a lot of work at night. So a lot of times things break down where they're at night. It's, you know, as you come in, it's like, where do you feel safe? We read everything in the papers. They see it more out in the field. There's some scary stuff out there. Thankfully, nothing's happened to us. We do try to bring security out there. We usually always take 2 people out there when we go. Unfortunately, we haven't been involved in other things, but some of our staff, I mean, they go out there, they see shootings right in front of them. I mean, they see cars shooting at each other and different things. So those are some of the things that, you know, as they're going out in the field daily, they're a little bit worried.
So, and my second question is, the report stated that there were issues of silos, communication silos between departments. I don't know if you're ready to answer this question, but, you know, what do you think are the first steps to kind of remedying that situation?
That's a great question. I mean, I wish I had the answer. I mean, it's certainly something that we're working on.
Sure.
As you start to see the silos forming, I mean, and then you kind of get an idea of it, it is trying to open communication. And that's our biggest thing, is this internal communication, trying to get the message across. As you get busy, it's like we start making decisions and not necessarily providing that information to everybody. And then some groups start to think, well, they don't really care about us. They're making all the decisions. It doesn't, you know, it's not, how does this impact us? So I think overall, it's going to be that internal communication highway to really try to get the information from top down to everybody throughout the organization. How we do that, so we are developing this communication plan, and that'll help.
Do you think, sorry, this is a follow-up question, but another way of asking it is, what do you think are the causes for these silos? Do you think it's cultural, like a specific culture within a department, or a technical reason that there's no way to communicate these things out in an efficient way? What do you think is the kind of culprit for this?
I really think that with our staff overall, we have a highly dedicated staff. I mean, they all want to do the best they can.
Yeah.
And a lot of them get frustrated. It's like, why aren't we doing this? I want to do this, and they want a voice. And it's trying to get those voices up. It's like, as you're sitting there and you see things changing, it's like, I see it, I'm out of my equilibrium, and I want to help. I want to jump in and make change. I want to make this work. And so it's trying to get all those together. So I think sometimes, as you know, things may not be going the way they want, or they're not getting the information, then that starts, well, they're not listening to me anymore. Things aren't happening. So it's really trying to break down those walls and really get that communication highway going.
Okay, well, that's it. And, you know, wish you luck on addressing all these issues.
Thank you.
Trustee James.
I just want to say I do agree with Trustee Leonard's point that she raised earlier. That's highly concerning. And then also just looking at the structure of the organization beforehand, it will be nice to have a visual of who was in these positions first and how it collapsed, especially when I'm looking at like the management analysts, and then you're looking at the environmental superintendent.
Right.
This isn't my wheelhouse. However, it would be great to have an explanation or just detailed information in regards to the positions. And just looking at this overall, no questions because they have asked the questions, but just overall, it's a lot of general language. To where like, we will try to do this, and this may be something, and looking just at the priority, and also going back to the point of the leadership team, notice that is the high priority of the leadership team, meaning to periodically review the district structure and adjust to organizational needs over time. And if there is no diversity within that leadership team, then how do we fully expect for the agency or to really mirror our community? And again, not just ethnicity, but genders, in SOGI, sexual orientation and gender identity. Overall, and another thing that is, I would say that stood out to me the most, besides those two, is the partnerships with our local agencies or schools or school districts. Like there is a working waterfront coalition that's taking place on Mare Island. They just graduated a cohort. That would have been a good partnership for wastewater, for this district to like partner with them because they are consistently looking for jobs. That class is diverse, and with some of them coming from Bay Area, but they had some folks that were from Solano County. And then also like our unions. So there are a lot of like local unions within our, what is it, the Napa Solano Labor Council, where they have several like apprenticeship programs where we should be partnering with them, because I understand the point of reaching kids at the school. However, our unions are a second chance opportunities for folks who may be system impacted. And there should be a strong partnership between this district and the unions as well. But again, not to belabor the point, but trustee Ledger did bring up a point that we need to talk about, and what is regular? So like regular meaning like, are we just gonna talk about this once a year? Or I would like to have this put on the agenda to where we review it quarterly, as just to track the process.
So,
Sorry, it was just a lot. It wasn't questions, just. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. Well, yeah, the questions have been asked, and I'll just bring up a couple of comments and ideas that kind of stem from what's been said. The safety issues, certainly, I mean, I think that really hit home for all of us because we have come in, especially the new folks, but really this whole council, that is now the Board of Trustees. We are prioritizing this. You can't snap your fingers, but I mean, we are working on the contract, the sheriff's office. We're trying to make sure that we get support as quickly as possible. And so this adds, I think, a little more urgency to the situation. And we certainly had conversations about the, you know, how our approach to the unhoused and encampments and RVs, not just near this area, but I mean, that spit out in White Slough is, I mean, that's a really, really dangerous situation. And hearing you say that's why folks feel unsafe, it's like, we all get it. I mean, we've talked about it. We know that's gotten out of control. And so it adds, I think, another sense of urgency for us to address that with our other hats on, that I think is important. And then with respect to the staffing structure, you know, what I will say is I do appreciate, I think the very first meeting we had, that was something you brought up. That's what you're like, this is a not a diverse industry, not a diverse agency, you know, this is something we have to prioritize. And I think there's two things through the conversation that came to mind for me. One thing I'd like to do, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a whole report, if Raf tell us, did any of this, I'd love to see it, or if they have raw data from the survey, maybe we can do some parsing through it on the side to make sure that, you know, if you have pretty good, I mean, it sounds like there are some real positives of the organizational structure and culture that we want to celebrate, but let's make sure anytime you have a you know, situation where there's the leadership team that's mostly male or mostly white, you want to make sure that when you look at that data, that all that red is in a single group. So let's make sure that if 20% of our organization is women, that it's not all the women, that there was one area where it was all the women. And it's not to like call out to me, it's just that there might just be a blind spot. You might realize that, oh my gosh, the way we communicated this or the way we did this with our work environment, it turns out that was not creating a sense of belonging amongst our women or amongst our staff of color. And that I think can be pulled out of the data if we can just see if there are any sort of red flags, you know, hey, this is a more urgent thing. And then I think one of the recommendations was to engage in goal setting with the board. And I think that this is a great space to have that conversation about how do we create the plan. I mean, this is like, the challenge is real and I appreciate your willingness to tackle it. And I think this board is committed to making sure that it's not just that broad language, but that we actually do come up with a plan, acknowledging that it's difficult, that we've got these fields, these STEM fields, engineering, you know, you're up against a historical, you know, there's been a historical disproportionate number of certain groups going into these fields, so how do we combat that? How do we create a space where we can have belonging for folks here? I remember the former HR director saying that there were leadership trainings that were really successful here, so I think maybe thinking about ways that you can find those communities for folks that are sort of in the underrepresented groups in those trainings, find those spaces. And then the other piece is we're all new to this. I mean, I think we've heard it 3 or 4 times in the round table. Wow, we're new to this issue, but you know, what does an entry-level job look like with VFWD? What entry-level opportunities might there be? And how do we get people in that pipeline? I was at Vallejo High yesterday and I said, oh, what do you all want to see in Vallejo? And they were like, there's no jobs for us, period, at all. There's no jobs for high schoolers, there's no job for, so is there something that folks can, you know, is there a job that somebody could do, like a summer job? That they could just come and do, you know, like administratively, and they can get exposed to the district. Or, you know, there's something for a community college student to come and do, and what would that entry level job require and what qualifications, and then we can try to figure out how we match that with what we have here. So I think there's some opportunities, and there's a desire amongst the board to kind of really go forward and try to make this happen soon, because yeah, you want to get this, you want to have a concrete plan when you're in a place, especially as diverse as Vallejo. Yeah, so I think that was my comment on it. Sure, go ahead, Trustee Forney.
I just have a quick question. Where did your safety manager go?
The safety manager, he actually just resigned, last week.
So you lost a tech person, you lost HR person, and now a safety manager.
The safety manager, resigned.
Okay, I'm just saying.
But the HR director, she resigned as well,
Right.
went to another agency.
Can I say, I don't want to put you on blast, but that's not why she said she left. Everything that we heard today is what she mentioned why she left. She wasn't feeling heard. She wasn't encouraged to want to hire other female staff. You shared that yourself. And so you lost a lot of people. And the part is, I like to, I know you can't say why, but if you're really trying to be transparent and really trying to dive deep, you remember working here as an engineer, correct? Did I say that right?
I was the director of engineering.
Right. And you remember how that felt. And now that you get to be in this position, you get to make big changes and support that, you know, and encourage the staff that you have here into leadership. I see 1, 2, 3 beautiful women in there. I mean, you know, they could be sitting up here in these spots. So I'm just saying, I'm not making anything, but offering leadership training could be a good start. But as I pointed out in the very beginning of my sentence, those concerns are very, very serious about not seeing. We know that DEI is gone, but the part of that was, it still means the reason we don't mind that being gone, because we're going to implement African Americans. We're going to implement Latinas and other nationalities. We're going to do this ourselves. We don't have to have some agency force us to do that. So just celebrating that, I hope that a year from now, we can see something different. I also want to echo our Board of Supervisor, Trustee James, that we are to come to see this maybe in 6 months, to see where we're at and how we can better support you.
That'd be great.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to work with you. And I mean, as you're pointing to that, I don't mean to call them out, but the Power Academy is what was started. And it was basically to help, basically empower kind of our next leadership team. And there's several in there. I think Natalie was part of the Power Academy, and Olivia back there was also part of the Power Academy. So it is something that's going to take time, but happy to work with you to try to make this work. We've had some changes over time that's changed our diversity makeup, but yes, it does show here. And I mean, as President Soares talked about, we're a very highly technical part, so there are parts that don't necessarily have the makeup we're looking for, the diversity, but we have to look from long term. It's like there's not as many people going into wastewater. How do we encourage the high school kids, the college kids, and all that? And the other thing you were talking about, which was great, I mean, you're like loading it up for me, is we have 4 internship positions right now. 4 internships to get college graduates over here. and I'll list them in the general manager's part, but we have 4 initiatives we're trying to get, that's part of our way to get more people involved in wastewater and get more people involved in the community to work here.
Go ahead, trustee Matula.
And as a follow-up, let's not minimize the successes the VFWD has. So let's, what you're doing right, make sure you maintain that success there. And I think, and when we talk about jobs and opportunities, I think you have 2 success stories right here. You have 2 interns that have been brought up through the ranks. And so if there's an opportunity to have a more robust internship, whether that's starting at the high school level or community college level, or at the labor, through the labor, teaming up with the unions, I think that's something to elaborate. And when we talk about diversity, what we're ultimately saying is, are you willing to change the culture? And by doing that, that's where you as an organization have to establish that within yourself as an entire organization, not just the people at the top, not just the decision makers. It has to be run down through the whole organization from top to bottom. And that's where it's ultimately gonna speak for, are you willing to take that leap of faith to the diversity, to represent what the community actually is, so.
Yeah, I appreciate it, thank you.
All right, I think it was trustee Matias. Do you have another comment?
Yeah, I'll be quick. So part of the reason why we're, or I'm gonna speak for myself, part of the reason why I'm asking these questions and also making these comments about the general manager is because I'm not gonna lie to you, when I came in last month and you said that someone else had retired, I saw the HR person had resigned, to trustee Gordon's point, and then I got another retirement. And now today you're saying there's another resignation. I think the one thing I would just offer as a suggestion is just that we need to slow this down and pause it and just have a conversation with staff and really like bring them up to speed on what is happening, why it's happening, how they could be a part of the process. I think that would be more helpful than just trying to roll full steam ahead when you are seeing flashing warning signs of potentially an issue that needs to be addressed. And so I think you've got the right the right orientation, as the president has shared, and you acknowledge that we've got some issues we've got to work through. I think it may be necessary to make sure we're having those discussions with some urgency now. Yeah. So thank you.
We'll go to trustee Paul Marks and then.
I wasn't raising my hand,
You're
sorry.
not. All right, trustee James. It was a convenient hand motion.
Sorry.
Conveniently timed.
Yes. Just going back to the safety component, it would be great if we can have the data of what are the safety infractions that are happening to employees, and then getting the heat map of where it's actually happening. As we sit on different boards, we can coordinate on those other boards to ensure that our employees are safe when they're going out in community. But it would be great, like what's happening, because billing is something completely different from actual data of what's happening in our city. I don't want to put out that narrative that Vallejo is dangerous when the data says something.
Yeah, and that's a good point, finding the right avenue, and this might have to be a conversation with the staff of, what's the right avenue for them to get their feedback to us in our city council hats as well, so that we have that information with that hat on. Trustee Latitude.
Just real quick, as it relates to the agenda for this particular item, it says receive and file organization assessment report. And so exactly, what does that mean? Because
it's basically, it's an information only. We've done this organizational assessment and we want to provide it to the board so you have safe exposure to it.
Okay, so we're not
No.
accepting it.
Right.
Okay, I'm just making sure. And there's no general ask, basically, from us.
No, the ask is that as part of the report and part of the changes that we're making are those 3 positions. And so those have the job descriptions, and those are part of 1B. So the business services director, which changes the finance director to business.
That's where your
services.
ask is gonna come in, be.
Correct.
Okay,
Okay.
I'm just
And that's
checking
just,
in.
yeah, a subset of, okay.
Okay.
It's not today, right?
No, it is today.
It is today.
With that, we're gonna move to it. Were there any members of the public that we do not? Was there any member of public that now wants to speak, having heard the discussion? All right, seeing none, we're gonna go ahead and move on to item B, which is consider adoption of a resolution authorizing the general manager to create the classification and compensation for the business services director and information technology manager positions, and to modify the classification and compensation for the finance manager position as presented. And this is stemming off, as was just said, stemming off of the previous discussion, and I'll turn it back over to the general manager for this item.
Sure, so the business services director, so as we talked about last year, we originally brought the AGM, there were a lot of duties that we're trying to find a spot for. One is that we don't really have a communications department, we don't have a lobbying department, IT was housed somewhere else. So we had to find a place to try to put this together. The Raptillis came up with this idea of this business service as more of the strategic group, which seemed to fit. As the HR director left, some of the other duties started to move over to HR took over in that part as well, but that'll eventually go to me. I will oversee the HR manager, but so as these duties came in, we looked at Raptillis recommended this business services to more strategically place the district, looking at, as we have a lot of legislation, regulation, working on PFAS, working on Mare Island, lobbying and doing all that. There's a big effort that we didn't have before. We just didn't have the capability. So before, Jeff Tucker, the finance director, was doing a lot of those, but it's not in his job description. So we're trying to figure out the best way to do that. So what we've done is started this finance director, change it to business services director, and then change the job description to include these additional duties.
So can we go back? So currently on the org chart that was flipped up, are the leadership team, we had, the director of finance / treasurer. So are we renaming that?
Correct.
So then before you, so this is the org chart on page 19 that we are actually implementing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just, yeah, okay, so let's break down what we are really asking for when I look at this org chart that's been suggested. What pieces are we adopting, and what does B have to do with those pieces? Because it's not clear, and I want to be crystal clear about
That
it.
makes sense. So basically the finance department ran finance. The finance director was also the treasurer. So as we've had, so now what we're creating is this business services director. And just so I have it, all the things that we've added into it.
So I just want clarification. So for the business, for the director, the business services director, that will now be the director of finance and treasurer.
Yeah, so the finance director, that position is changing into the business services director. We're taking the treasurer duties and putting them into the finance manager, Olivia Ruiz.
No, I'm clear on that. I'm just saying this individual will now be the head of this new division that you're developing on this side of the chart. We're implementing this piece right now.
Most of it, not all of it. So it's the finance department with some added pieces, correct?
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So finance department, added IT, added communications.
So we'll have finance, we'll have the IT manager, Mike.
Do you want to continue?
So it also, other part is, so it also takes, Eddie moves over to that department, as also manages the board clerk, that part as well.
So the safety manager, the compliance and program quality, is that going, or? I'm just trying to figure
Good
out.
point. So the other part I missed, administration department, the administration department is also moving over as well.
Okay, so essentially on page 19, that is going to be that is going to be the new, where the division of finance treasury director will be over business services.
Most of it. The safety manager and HR are still together. So those will stay together, once be under me.
Okay.
the compliance strategy manager, we're still working that one out.
All right, I'll continue around. I think I saw Trustee James, did you have a question? Other questions?
Okay, you got one?
No, well, I mean, the only question is the follow-up to,
Go
trustee Latitude's is it would help to see that actual org chart, the way that you're envisioning it, because it's hard to put these pieces together the way that you're describing right now. So I think visually, it just comes that way.
Because it goes back to the question, for me, when I I go back to my question, and I'm very adamant about it, and I'm just gonna be very frank. I'm very adamant about the structure and the way the structure is today are being proposed with the current leadership. I'm very adamant and I want to understand it and I want to see it very clear. It's very important to me when I think about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think about the growth of this organization. Just to Trustee James' point, you cannot develop an organization when nobody looks like you. I just have to be really frank about it, and I take it very serious when we speak about developing equity, diversity, and inclusion. And so when I'm thinking about you're moving forward, we just talked about, is there a pause somewhere? What are we really doing? How does staff really feel? And are all these pieces the right pieces right now? You don't have to answer it because it's just something I just want to put out there for again, why I'm asking to really see this clearly in the movie.
I mean, it's sort of be clear that it's a finance director position. So as we started to add duties to it with starting to look at the communication plan, starting to help with the board agenda, starting to help with IT and doing all those things and putting those under. And then Raptilus confirmed, it's like, hey, it'd be better to call this something else, call this the strategic group. And then we said, okay, well, business services, that's more based on our peer agencies. That's what some of them have. This makes more sense. These are some of the duties that they have. It looks like that's because that's what you're doing already. So we want to set up that department to do that. So we're basically changing the title of finance director to business services. And then there's these added duties that are added in.
So I fully understand the structure, meaning why you would have those services together. I'm on point with all of those things. That's not and I see you're shifting. That's not the point that I'm making. And again, if we think about, yes, you have to compensate individuals who take on additional duties. And again, we have 4 males and we are giving someone additional duties. We're increasing pay and so forth and on. And I still come back to the question of equity. I come back to the question of diversity, and I come back to the question of inclusion while we are making those changes. So, and it would be very transparent. It would be much more transparent if there was an overlay of what we were really doing and being asked to do.
May I make a recommendation one, I'd like to re-echo trustee Mateus's to pause this and not we vote on this today until you can please give us a detailed chart that's realistically that's in decline right now. And I want to make sure I understood something before I continue this request. So your director has not been hired, right? Your business director has not been hired.
Yes, our finance director is Jeff Tucker, who's.
Oh, you want him to go over that?
He's going to be the business service director, correct?
And you, okay, because I think, I'm sorry, I think it's important to keep your HR director where they are at because they are the heart of who is in here. But I really believe that we should pause on this too. We can get a clear vision to what you actually are trying to implement. I get what you're saying, but I'm a paper person, as you can see. I like to see that and set it in front of us, if that makes sense.
It does. I mean, so one of the things, I mean, it's a little tough because I mean, as a general manager, I'm moving pieces around to get the job done, and I'm trying to make things work. I mean, the reality is, I mean, the moving as far as duties to my other staff to make that work, changing job descriptions, and that's part of my purview to make it happen. Try to get the district to work out the best it can. The real issue on this one is there is a compensation increase. But I'm happy to help with understanding of how the district's running, how we're moving pieces around. I mean, this is just a study. This isn't, I can certainly show charts to show, hey, here's what we're doing, like in the first 6 months, here's what we're doing the first next year, and happy to do that as well, and then we can talk through that.
But that's not what I was asking. I'm just asking about this piece. I celebrate that opportunity. And again, I'm like my colleagues, I congratulate the individuals who have rise up in the rank, and congratulations to that. We're not trying to deplete that at all. But we don't want to overlook issues that we do see, you know what I'm saying? That's the reason why we're here. But if you was, let's say something happened to you and somebody had to replace you temporarily, let's say you're in the hospital or something, and they would not be able to tell us what you just told us because it's not documented. See, I go by documentation, so I would like to see it right here, what we're looking, because he asked a question, and no, not really. She asked said something, no, not really. It's another piece, yeah, kind of, sort of. That's all confusing. Does that make sense? So I would like to see it visually here, and then if you want to have an emergency meeting, you can do that. That's up to you and the colleagues here. But I just want to see it more visual, you know, and to see it clear. What is it that you're doing? What is it you actually have? And again, I would like to see more diversity, but that, you know, and we can't say it's not out there because it is. It's just wanting that. And then you said, no, we don't. Do we have a plan to look into making sure we do better with diversity? No, we don't. But why not? You've been in the seat for over a year and a half. You already knew this was a concern because your data told you it was. And just me trying to be very gentle and being a regional, I used to be a GM. I know the criteria, especially in the South, but you know, it's still important that we see this here. And if your true goal is to really focus on that, whether it's hard for you to take, I expect it to be here so we can clearly see it without saying any more. Thank you. That's my recommendation, that we pause on this until we can see it visually.
All right, I thought trustee Mitchell, you already went, right?
Yeah.
All right, I've got trustee Palmares next then.
Sounds a little nitpicky, but I want to ask, why the wording business services director versus like administrative services director?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We contemplated it. So the original Raptos report talked about it as the strategic management director. So that was what they suggested. But as we looked at the peer agencies, they didn't have that. And we're like, this will be in unicorn. It's not, doesn't exist anywhere else.
Yeah.
What doesn't exist in other agencies are the administrative director or business services director. So we looked at the business service director, looked at what their capabilities were, what they have in other agencies, and this was more typical of what they had, and they were more comparable. So we selected.
Me for the positions under them.
Correct.
For that name.
Yeah, so I mean, if you look.
Versus administrative services director, that doesn't exist in other agencies.
Right, so if you look at, I mean, in the board memo, as it looked at the benchmark agencies.
Yeah.
There's administrative service director, there's business service director at Delta Diablo, there's administrative service manager, there's an AGM, director of admin. So we tried to find something that seemed to make sense. And so we were looking at administrative services, but we knew that there was a lot of external communications in this. This had to do with a lot of the lobbying efforts, work with Mayor Allen and work with Garamendi and others. So we wanted to capture that as best we can, so we selected business services.
Okay. Maybe not business and administrative, or is that? just
We
too
talked, I mean, we actually have. There's so many jobs.
He's probably like, are you kidding me? You guys?
And the reason I'm asking is, I know Jeff's gonna be in this role or is in this role, but looking forward, let's say you have to put this job on the market, someone's looking for a job and it's like, oh, I have a background administrative, whatever, clerks and stuff like that, and they're not getting this. That's why I'm mildly concerned about that. Maybe that's a bridge we'll cross when we get there, but just something I'm seeing right now.
And definitely the comparables, I mean, they're varied, and so every district has different people under them. But the majority, a lot of them do have IT administration and some of those, so, and communications, so we try to tailor it as best we can.
Okay, all right, thanks.
So I think Jim has.
A question, just the timeline of this, is this coinciding with the budget conversation, or like when do you want to have,
This would be immediate. Immediate on the first two, so immediate, the business services director, would, already doing those duties would continue on. And then the finance manager, also already existing, or here with us, continue on with those duties. The one that's different is the IT manager. So the IT manager is right now, it's an unbudgeted position. So it'd be just setting up the job description. What we would go is that if the budget looks like it's getting approved, we can actually start recruiting for that a little bit sooner. So it just puts it in the stable so that if the position gets approved and we get budget, or if we have another opening, we can fill it.
So compensation will be immediate too?
Correct, well, compensation, so that on the IT manager, there's a range. So it would be dependent, so that one does have the range of 203,000. Top of the range starts at 184, which is actually low with our comparable agencies, lower, that was a little bit more difficult. But we regroup for it and we'd see who we get.
So I appreciate all the questions, and I know, since we meet to go over the agenda, I have a little more information and context, but I think I'm thinking about a next step that I think it's become clear that the board, we see the existing organizational chart, and then we see the Raftellus memo, which you received and are now interpreting and deciding what of this you're gonna implement, and then you have a vision for the org chart. I think there's a desire amongst the board to discuss further that vision of like, this is how I see this org chart, because this is just, what we have here is just what Raftellus said. So then we go off of that. So there's another step that maybe next month we can, if you would be willing to present your proposed org chart, or wherever we think that fits in with the cadence of the discussion. But I do think with respect to this item, I agree with everything that's been said. I'd be in favor of going ahead and proceeding with this, because we have people that are doing duties beyond their existing job descriptions that I want to get properly compensated. Really, there's one that would be a compensation change, but I want them to get compensated for the duties they're fulfilling in that position, and go ahead and move on that and not leave them hanging. So my priority would be to go ahead and do this with the understanding that this is only a small segment of the broader discussion we're having of the org chart. Other questions or comments from the board? Any public comments on the item? No comment. All right, seeing none, do we have a motion on the item?
I gave one.
Oh, was that a motion? Oh, it was. I'm so sorry. I missed the motion language. I was still coming around for discussion. All right, so the motion, can you repeat the motion, please, so we know what we're voting on?
Secretary report, you did you hear?
That you move to basically table this motion, until further notice.
Yes.
All right, I think
Agreeing with,
I think we might need to do a roll call vote on this one. With the secretary mind doing a roll call vote. So the motion is to table.
Right. President Source,
No.
Secretary Matulak,
No.
Trustee James,
No.
Trustee Matias,
No.
Trustee Liddy,
No.
Trustee Palmeras,
No.
Trustee Gordon.
yes.
All right, so that motion, what is that, 6-1,
Yeah, motion
fails
is-
6-1. Do we have another motion on the item?
I don't know if you heard that my motion was also to, if you wanted to have an emergency meeting, if you would bring it to us clear, and then we have an emergency meeting, then we could approve it. That was the second half that you didn't say. Yeah, so that's what I was asking.
Okay,
We already voted no?
we
We
voted,
did vote
yeah.
no.
All
Let's-
of it? So can we?
Let's go ahead and, do we have another motion on the item?
Yeah, so move to consider the adoption of resolution number 2025-6143, authorizing the general manager to create the classification and compensation for the business services director and information technology, IT manager positions, and to modify the classification and compensation for the finance manager position as presented.
All right, thank you. Let's go ahead and do a roll call vote for that one, just to be safe as well.
President Source,
Yes.
Secretary Matula,
Yes.
Trustee James,
Yes.
Trustee Matias,
No.
Trustee Lady Ju,
No.
Trustee Ramirez,
Aye.
and Trustee Gordon.
No,
All right, so that passes 4-3.
no disrespect.
I understand the concerns that are raised, and I think we're gonna have a good, we'll have a good plan for follow-up on that. So with that, we will move on to item C, which is to approve the extension of the emergency action for Sears Point Sewer Force main repairs due to fire damage. This is an extension of the item we had a couple months ago, right? So I'll go ahead and have the
Great.
general manager.
So I'd like to introduce Natalie Meridian, Associate Engineer.
Board of Trustees, I'm Natalie, Associate Engineer here with the district. This is a request to extend an existing emergency action to repair the Sears Point force main that was damaged in the fire. I do have a schedule update on the project. We had previously anticipated receiving all materials and equipment to start construction by the end of March. Unfortunately, due to the tariffs, we have been delayed by about 2 weeks on that. So we just received the last piece of equipment that we need to start construction late last week. So that's great news. We're ready to go. The contractor anticipates starting on this coming Monday, so April 21st, and will be complete by around May 9th. So that's the project schedule for now. If you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, President.
Any questions from the board?
Just a point of clarification, when he says forfeits vote, that's 80%, so that would be 5.6 of 7.
Thank you. I have no idea how it works. I have no idea how it works when it's 7 out of 8. Yeah, but seeing no questions or comments, do we have a motion on the item?
Yes, I move to approve it.
All right, any public comment on the item? First to ask for that earlier. All right, then we're ready for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstaining? All right, motion passes 5-4 for this vote. We do not have to do any math. I appreciate that. That is gonna bring us to item 7, which is our general manager's report.
Thank you. March was another no spill month, meaning no sewer spills, thank you to FOPS and Environmental Services. April 15th marks the end of the storm season and closing the sandbag station. The district provided 100+ tons of sand and 8,000+ sandbags to the community. We're continuing to work with Garamendi's office on obtaining more funding for Mare Island with an appropriation and federal funding for a shipbuilding repair. As we talked about, we have several intern positions that are open, including a communications intern, engineering intern, environmental services intern, and finance intern. If you know someone that would be interested, please direct them to the district website or give them your card. Your card actually has our website on it, so they have a QR code that they can access it. We're working through the budget process and we'll provide a presentation at the May board meeting. That's the end of my report.
All right, thank you. That's gonna bring us to our community forum. Do we have anyone wishing to address the board on matters not on the agenda tonight? All right, seeing none, that is gonna bring us to reports by presiding officer and trustees. Do any of my colleagues have anything to report? Trustee Gordon.
First, I want to say that we have been working with staff regarding your concerns you shared about the safety with our homeless encampment and how they've been violating the property by coming on illegally, trespassing. And then I believe you mentioned that they even broke the lock and tried to, can you share that, what happened you were telling me about?
Yeah, I mean, the lock that we had shared, the lock was cut, but then put back to make it look like it wasn't cut.
Yeah. And so, have you had any issues since that? Still, have you had any issues regarding those concerns?
So we are sending our security guards in every couple hours, so they are running in there checking the lock.
I saw them doing that, by the way.
So they're checking all the time. I don't believe that we've had any issues. Not on site.
Not on site, though. And I want to say thank you, so very much. We have a cleanup for South Vallejo on the 26th. Any and everyone is welcome. We're going to be meeting in Emmanuel Temple on the 26th from 9 to 12 to help clean up our community. This is District 6, which is my district you happen to be in. So please feel free to come. I want to thank you so much for listening to me, seeing you saying that we want to keep things different, and by providing us an email providing our own name tag and our beautiful cards. I want to say thank you for that. And I want to thank you for making yourself available, allowing me to be transparent with my concerns. It's the only way I know how to be, so I appreciate that. And I really do want to be a partner with how we can work together and take this to another level. Thanks.
Absolutely, thank you.
Any other reports from my colleagues? I'll just share very briefly on behalf of myself and trustee Palmares, actually, that with a combination of this and our other hat on, in a very interesting way, we are engaging on Mare Island infrastructure issues. We have met with Mare Island Company and with VFWD staff, and we'll be convening a couple more conversations to try and work through some of the issues with relation to Connolly Corridor and the infrastructure ownership. So thank you for doing that, and we'll definitely be providing updates as soon as we have them, as the reps for Mare Island with our other hats on. And with that, that is gonna bring us, I believe, to our closed session. So the plan is for.
Can I interrupt real quickly? I'm so sorry.
Of course.
We can stay in this room.
Yes.
And we can excuse the
We will
public.
excuse everyone.
After I make an announcement, if that would be all right with you.
Perfect,
Madam
yes,
Chair.
what I'll do is, so we'll have you announce the item, and then we'll go into closed session, and then once we're done with closed session, we'll invite anyone who wants to come back in, and we'll report out if anything
Yes.
was determined. So, yes, please,
All right,
announce
so
the item.
now is the time on the agenda for the board to adjourn into closed session for a conference of real property negotiators pursuant to Government Code 54956.8, as described on the agenda. If there's anyone who wishes to make public comment at this time, this is the time, online or in person, and if not, then the public is excused.
Any public comment? All right, seeing none, we will excuse and thank our members of the audience for being here, and we'll adjourn into closed session.